Stanley Kubrick's 1968 sci-fi masterpiece 2001: A Space Odyssey is what I consider to be the best film ever made. It's a movie that made a lasting impact on film history and has inspired countless other films after it. It has been listed as one of the best films ever made by many different publications, and in 2022, it was named the best film ever made by the Sight and Sound Directors Poll and was in the top 10 of the Critics Poll as well. While loved by critics and fans alike, it also gets a fair amount of hate. Criticized for being too long, too boring, too abstract, 2001 has not escaped negativity in the film community. The first time I watched the film, I found myself agreeing with the common criticisms. I found it confusing and boring as someone who was just beginning to get into film. But after my third viewing, specifically after watching it in a movie theater, I found myself obsessed and fully praising the film as a masterpiece.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
2001: A Space Odyssey follows three different stories, each following the discovery of a monolith, which is an alien object that represents evolution within the story. The first part, which takes place at the dawn of man, follows a pack of chimpanzees as they discover the use of weapons after finding a monolith. The second part follows a scientist, Dr. Hayward Floyd, as he travels to find a monolith found on the moon's surface. A highlight of this section is a long scene where Kubrick shows off the futuristic world, while Strauss's The Blue Danube plays in the background. Kubrick almost uses the camera as if it were dancing in a waltz, which does an incredible job of showcasing the spacecrafts moving through space. This section also features plenty of dialogue and exposition, which provides context while also remaining mysterious and vague. Third part, which is where the story really kicks off and is the most iconic part in my opinion, follows a group of astronauts on a mission to Jupiter to find another monolith. 3 scientists are in hibernation while 2 others watch over the ship with the help of a supercomputer named HAL 9000. Eventually, one of the scientists begins to think that HAL is starting to fail.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Which makes HAL go insane, killing everyone until he is eventually shut down. This part is specifically famous because of its use of AI and the darkness of the plot. At some points, it almost seems like you're watching a horror movie.
Daisy. Give me your answer, do.
The final bit of the film, which follows the surviving scientist Dave as he gets sucked into a stargate in the middle of space, is incredibly chippy and is one of the most iconic uses of color and music in film history. It's an almost 10-minute sequence, which gets more and more abstract and more disturbing throughout. The film ends with Dave finding himself in a hotel room where he watches himself age rapidly until he finds the monolith at his bedside and then transforms into a star child watching over the earth. The film follows a consistent plot, which is somewhat easy to follow, even though it can be a bit vague and abstract at times, until the end, which feels like something completely different. Kubrick created something truly abstract and insane, something that could have only been created with the medium of film. The plot is extremely vast and has a very large scale. It centers around themes of evolution, technology, and human nature, which are very complicated to master. But 2001 does it, and does it in an interesting and unique way, which has created decades worth of analysis and conversation. Stanley Kubrick is known as possibly the best director of all time. He was known for redoing shots an absurd amount of times in order to get exactly what he needed. Even though he had already made some really great movies before 1968, 2001 was the first film he had ever made which seemed truly perfect, where he had practically mastered the medium of film in order to tell a story. There's not a bad decision, a poorly framed shot, or a sound design mistake. Even the special effects, which you may think would have been poorly done when compared to the films of today, remain incredibly realistic. It's almost like Kubrick went into space in order to get some of these shots. There is many scenes throughout the film where there is an extreme absence of dialogue. Sometimes as much as 10 minutes will go by without any dialogue. This lets the cinematography and the sound design come to the forefront. It's almost like visual poetry, where Kubrick combines many different filmmaking techniques, and it just works. 2001 is one of the most iconic movies ever made because of this. Think of this shot, or this shot, or this music cue, or this one. Even if you watch 2001 and find it boring or pretentious, you can't deny how iconic the filmmaking is. Like most Kubrick films, 2001 is a film that should be watched on the big screen. I know that sounds pretentious, but watching 2001 on the biggest screen with the loudest speakers is 100% the best way to experience it. Some of these images are so intricate that they are too difficult to fully comprehend on a regular TV screen. The sound design of 2001 is such a crucial part of the film that you are only really going to get the full experience if you are surrounded by it. The soundtrack needs to be blasted, the high-pitched sound effects need to be painful, the breathing needs to be uncomfortable. The story of 2001 may not be disturbing for the entire film, but when you are put in that environment for almost 3 hours, with no way to leave or to turn the volume down, it makes it a memorable and immersive experience. It's the way that Kubrick intended the movie to be seen. 2001 isn't a movie that you can forget. It's a film that stays in your brain for days after watching it. The film sticks with you, not because of anything that happens in it, although there are some really fucked up things that happen in it, but because of the filmmaking, and that's why I believe it is the best movie ever made.